Robert Thurman, named as one of Time magazine's 25 most influential people of 1997 in the U.S., has been a college professor and writer for 30 years and holds the first endowed chair in Indo-Tibetan Buddhist Studies in America at Columbia University. He is the co-founder and president of the nonprofit organization Tibet House, New York. He was the first Western Tibetan monk, a student for over 35 years, and a friend of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He is the author of several books, including Inner Revolution and Essential Tibetan Buddhism, and is acknowledged as a key figure in American Buddhism. We just found out that Inner Revolution is out of print currently in the UK, but it is a book that touched me personally deeply, and I recommend all of you read it. Thurman lives in New York City with his wife, Nina, who is managing director of Tibet House, New York. He also is the father of 5 children, including actress Uma Thurman. Let us warmly welcome Robert Thurman.
Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you, Robin and Cody, for inviting me here to participate in the great rethinking. I think it's a nice place to rethink because after all, this is Oxford and this is jolly old England. And what has happened here in the last few centuries has had a profound impact on the planet, not always for the good, I must say. I don't think that most of the members of the planet who suffered under imperialism and colonialism were too pleased with it. But in a way, it was what was the karma of the situation. And so now the thing is to try to make something good out of everything, whatever it has been, in the great rethinking. But the auspicious thing, I think, is that in the great rethinking, we have to, I think, step outside of any one particular culture. And although I'm speaking in English, and this is England, where this is the mother tongue, and English has become a kind of lingua franca around the world because of the legacy of imperialism and colonialism, the colonial conquest of the planet from this island. There are other cultures and civilizations who have thought through things, and I think we've finally reached a point in planetary history where we can entertain the idea only recently, and many people will still not entertain it, I think. But we can entertain the idea that the fact that the West, quote unquote, conquered the world may be a sign not of the West's superiority to the rest of the world, but perhaps a sign of the West's inferiority to the rest of the world in some respects. For example, the biggest bully on the block, who beats up everyone and terrifies everyone else on the block, is not likely to be thought of on that block by the other residents as being the superior one on the block, other than in violence. And other people who may be more gentle and more tolerant and even perhaps forgiving even of the bully, and hoping that the bully will come to his or her senses and stop dominating everybody and start to communicate with them. So the bully shouldn't think always that they're the ones who are going to save everything. Since, the Western, quote unquote, it's like Gandhi, Gandhi said once when they were having a session in his ashram, and people were discouraged about his getting India free from the British colonial domination, and things were not looking good. And people said to him, well, Mr. Gandhi, though, thinking of sources of hope, they said, well, Mr. Gandhi, though, what about American civilization? And Gandhi's response was, American civilization? Now that would be a good idea. And actually, Indian civilization, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today, isn't there anymore. The concept of cool heroism, I think, is something that has been elaborated. It is not unique, of course, to Asian civilizations, not at all. But it is something that was elaborated in a technical way and in a practical way, and in the history of Indian civilization, I think perhaps more than almost any other. The great teacher the two great teachers that I can think of, or three great teachers in Indian history that I can think of, would be, of course, Shakyamuni the Buddha, and then the great philosopher Nagarjuna, and then the great philosopher and poet Shantideva, who respectively lived around 500 before the Common Era, around 100 of the Common Era, and around 750 of the Common Era. So spanning over 1,000 years in Indian history. Their yoga, which is called the famous yoga of the exchange of self and other, the equal exchange of self and other, I think really is sort of the key teaching of the yoga of cool heroism, the yoga of practical nonviolence. But anyway, to come back to something more familiar to you all, by good luck today, I happened to, in the train, the very delightful train coming from Paddington Station, which I enjoyed very much, the ride here, I was reading a manuscript that was sent to me by the publisher for some sort of a blurb, a comment, by this charming gentleman who I actually have heard talk, and I know him a little bit, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and it's called God Has a Dream, a Vision of Hope for Our Time. And I was lamenting a little bit in coming that I didn't bring with me a copy of Shantideva's book, translation or whatever, because I like to, in talking on this topic, read just even a verse or two from Shantideva, the great teacher of the exchange of self and other and the yoga of cool heroism, just so that people just don't think I made it all up on myself, since I am neither cool nor a hero, and therefore people might justifiably be skeptical with me going on about cool heroism without quoting someone more accomplished than I. And so how delightful it was to deal with Bishop Tutu and to read his delightful book, which begins every chapter with referring to children of God. He addresses us all, the reader, as dear child of God, which of course is always a stretch for me, since I don't really believe in the same God that he does in some way. But in another way, I do believe in his notion of the force of love and the force of creativity and the force of freedom in history and in the world. I just don't believe in anything omnipotent. The Buddha actually met God, they say. There's a famous story where Buddha, in his previous life as a bodhisattva, when he was a yogi looking for the nature of reality, he developed the yogic power to go out of body and to go into divine realms, heavenly realms, of which the Indians have about 24 levels, very elaborated, which you can reach in samadhic states. And he went to the one where the creator God, the being believed to have been the creator God in Indian civilization at that time, Brahma, mighty Brahma. And he met mighty Brahma, and he asked him, he said, "Oh, mighty Brahma, I heard you are the creator of the world. Since you are, could you kindly tell me, I who am seeking to know the true nature of things, what was there before there was earth, water, fire, air, space, and consciousness?" And Brahma's answer to him was, "Do you know how busy I am? I have a lot of problems on my mind. I have a lot of things to do. You're coming here and bothering me with silly questions," and et cetera, et cetera. He gave him a kind of Wizard of Oz reception, like, "Don't bother me," sort of thing. So then the Buddha, as a bodhisattva, withdrew. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, God, Brahma, great Brahma. I didn't mean to bother you. I'll take off now, go back to my meditation. Please take care of the universe, no sweat." But as he was leaving, then Brahma sneaked around the outside and said, "Hey, come over here." Just like he didn't have Toto with him, but it's very like the Wizard of Oz scene. He came around and said, the God came out from behind the curtain himself. And he said, "Hey, come over here. Come here, Buddha." So he goes over, and then God says to him, "I can't send you away disappointed. It's just that I couldn't answer you honestly in front of all the godlings in my court. Because the truth of the matter is, I don't know the answer to your question. Why? In this particular cycle of the universe, it was just that I was the first being to show up. And I was suddenly here all alone. And I didn't really know what was going on. And I was wondering where everybody was. Sort of remembering there used to be some other people from the previous universe. And at that moment, pop, 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 all these other godlings showed up all around me. And when they saw me, having preceded them, they said, Dada. So at first I said, I'm not your Dada. We're in this together type thing. And then they looked so frightened and so confused that I sort of said, well, okay, I'll be Dada. So they think I am Dada. And they think I created this and I'm in charge and in control. But the fact is, I don't know what is going on. Not exactly. I have a lot of good ideas, but I don't exactly know what is going on. However, I can tell in some lifetime soon, you are going to come to an understanding of the nature of reality. And at that time, I want two favors from you, from my honest answer to you. One, I want you to come and let me in on it. And two, I want you to tell human beings and other creatures that when things go wrong for them and they suffer the untold miseries that they do, it's not my fault. I did not create those nasty things. I'm subject to it as much as them. And we have to work it out together, type of thing. So this is a wonderful story. I think when Buddha recounted that story 2,500, 2,600 years ago, there were many high priests in that culture whose institutions were founded on people's belief in a creator God. And yet they didn't burn him at the stake. They didn't immolate him. They didn't destroy him. They even enjoyed his teaching, in fact, which is shows a good sign about the tolerance of Indian civilization even at that time. We can imagine a few centuries ago, even in a place even like this, a story like that would get you out there on a nice piece of good old, solid old English firewood. Although today we can laugh and relax about it, although perhaps some of us may worry. When I tell this story in the American Middle West, I always have to stay silent for a moment afterwards while people wait for the rumble of thunder and the lightning bolt. And when the lightning bolt has not so far struck, then there's a palpable feeling of relief in the room, actually. So I therefore enjoy telling it, I must confess. I do. So, but anyway, Bishop Tutu, he has a marvelous chapter. He says, Dear child of God, if we are truly to understand that God loves all of us, we must recognize that he loves our enemies too. Yes, God does not share our hatred, no matter what the offense that we have endured. We try to claim God for ourselves and for our cause, but God's love is too great to be confined to any one side of a conflict or to any one religion. And our prejudices, regardless of whether they are based on religion, race, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, or anything else, are absolutely and utterly ridiculous in God's eyes. Now that is spoken like a true, cool hero. And I think why I say this is particularly fortuitous, and I won't presume to teach for Bishop Tutu, as I'm not exactly in that tradition, but I think it's very fortuitous because right now, we are standing in the planet in what, in a day or two from now, Andrew Harvey will describe to you, as he calls it, the hour of God, when we are put to the trial. I'm an American. I'm 62 years of age. I came of age perhaps a little bit before the 60s, but certainly during the 60s. And I thought we had our last horrible regression to medieval Neanderthal mindset with Nixon. Then I thought we were having, another round of rubbing it in with Reagan, when somehow Carter was thrown out, although he was doing a great job, just because he had a funny accent. But he had that toothy smile. And then, we can't even believe what is taking place now in my country, in this country that I don't even recognize. Although maybe perhaps it is the bearing naked of actually the negative side of that country for all to see finally by someone so stupid that they really don't understand what they're doing. I hope. But in any way, since we are in a situation like that, we're very likely to feel, and the key to being caught in that situation is our despair and our feeling of our inability and our feeling of the impotence of cool heroism or even any kind of coolness, and our feeling of fright and wish to flee from the kind of sort of fascist thing that is going on. And at that time, it is this old problem that we have, a stereotype that goodness is weak and powerless, and evil and stupidity is powerful and will crush, therefore, inevitably the good. Caesar versus Jesus, this is rubbed in the Western mindset, not since Jesus' time, actually, but since Constantine's time, since the Roman Empire a little bit co-opted the teaching of Jesus. And so that is what makes this possible. We could not be dominated by such inferior characters, except that we are all hopeless and despaired. And we feel impotent. In America, less than half the people vote because they are persuaded by corporate-controlled propaganda media, controlled by the same corporations that make war implements nowadays since Reagan. Westinghouse, General Electric, these companies make military engines of various kinds. And they control now the main mass organs of mass media. And so because of that, everyone is so despaired, so no one votes. Not enough people vote. So a small, fanatical, intolerant, backward-thinking minority can dominate. So therefore, we're likely to forget that a mere 12 or so years ago, 10 years ago, South Africa, which was the symbol of racism, practically just a slightly transposed version of slavery, a symbol of obduracy, of stubbornness, of nuclear-powered prejudice and violence, suddenly opened in a miracle. And after opening in a miracle, rather than having a reverse bloodbath, a reverse disaster, although, AIDS and things, people leave us to believe there's like a lot of crises going on, the media does. Nevertheless, Bishop Tutu precisely oversaw this, Council on Reconciliation, or I forgot the exact name, something, committee or council or something on truth and reconciliation, in which he would sit, and I remember seeing video of him sitting, listening, with his eyes rolling, and other members of these panels, to these former torturers, murderers, racist, dominators, recounting the tale of their atrocities, and for the most part being forgiven in some sort of public thing. I mean, something inconceivable, incredible. Even when you see it going on, you think, this must be a mistake. This can't be happening on this planet. This is like, they're all going to go kill each other later. How can this be that these people are, how can this level of trust and forgiveness and transcendence even be possible? But that is an activity of cool heroism. And that is an activity that won an election in just, 1995 or something, even more recently. And then there's the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was said to be, in America anyway, I don't know here exactly what the level of propaganda about it was, but that was inevitable. You never lay their weapon down. They never get tired of it. They're the end of the world. We have to keep our guard up, etc., etc. Endless atrocities in the name of defending against that. And then they said, forget about it. They let go of the Ukraine. They let go of they said, they made that choice that the cool hero must make. The cool heroine, the cool hero must make. Which is a choice that, all right, I'm not going to live by hatred any longer. Or even if I'm calm and cool driving to work in my automobile, I allow hatred to still dominate my society by the military budget, by the nuclear weapons and missiles poised and aimed everywhere, by the prison system with million black people in a prison, by all of the different things that in fact are still in place around supposedly the mild liberal person. But the cool hero must make a choice at some point that the life that is defended paranoidly through the systematic and intense oppression of others, what am I defending? Where is the freedom in that? Tutu, in this book, he talks about how in the apartheid type of society, the people on top, the people and privileged people, the people who dominate and imprison and have the control laws and the pass laws and all of the horrible mechanisms of oppression and dehumanization, are dehumanized themselves in subscribing to those policies, in subscribing to those institutions, in allowing these things to go on in their own name. And they therefore have lost their freedom. America today has more people in prison than any country in the world, perhaps with the exception of China. In China, statistically, it doesn't seem like prison. They call them work camps. The Laogai. So they have actually a lot more, in fact. But the China wouldn't probably accept that the global corporations support the current Chinese government. Otherwise, they would have gone down with the Soviet government after Tiananmen Square. They were on their way. But then the corporate people kept them going. You know, our dear American, my fellow New Yorker, Henry the K, who works for them. And Bush Sr., they told him, go ahead, it's okay. You can clean up Tiananmen Square. You can crush them. We'll support you anyway. We'll do business with you anyway. We'll use your cheap labor to make all of our products and re-import them back into our country. And so that government still persists, although it hasn't got a shred of legitimacy, in fact, in the eyes of its own people. Only of Communist Party members who are the oligarchy there. So I guess U.S. can share it with China, the glory of the continued distorted mode of world governance. So South Africa is something we should remember. The Soviet Union's peaceful dissolution is something we should remember, because the key to the current crisis is that we can win. I think actually I have to take my hat off to you in England, although I don't know who here is from England and who's from US and who's from where. I have no idea. But those of you who are from England, I do take my hat off to you. I believe your turnout in the peace movement recently, which seems to have failed, they have us convinced because they went ahead and they blasted Iraq anyway. The foolish people who are stuck there in like quagmire number, the ultimate quagmire, probably. But that piece, you all did a fantastic job here, the way you turned out, I thought. We were very inspired by it in America, by the incredible turnout. And you are to be applauded as cool heroes for doing that. Someone was telling me in London yesterday that people were calling up, because it came around on the internet, the information about it, and then people who wanted to dutifully, they would call up any sort of peace group or something and saying, I want to come to the demonstration, how can I register? Because nobody's used to this, like there was nobody to register, you just register by putting your body out there in the street. And, when people do that, then there's nothing that they can do. There's nothing that the power addicts who are still seem to be in control, although I think they're very desperate in reality. There's nothing they can do if everybody goes out and registers in that way. So anyway, cool heroism. Now the second, so we can remember our recent history, and we can take heart when it comes to the moment of cool heroism. Cool heroism is going out in the street. Cool heroism is not accepting these half-wit politicians, while not being angry with them. We have to remember that Bishop Tutu will remind me that God loves George Bush. but perhaps not in quite the cushy, privileged, Yale type of Texas way he thinks. God will love George Bush by sending him out to sort of do surgery or something, or clean up the fields and deal with the deformed births and all of the disasters that he has already inflicted on Afghanistan and Iraq and many places. And maybe George Bush will have to go and experience a few executions with him on the other side of the electricity that he loves to pull, that he loves. So I know I don't applaud that. I wouldn't, but I know it's funny. But I would be sorry about that. We would be sorry about it. But maybe he would need that to break through his armoring that makes him unable to feel what he likes to inflict. He thinks it's funny when he inflicts it on people as governor of Texas. Or now he did execute the first federal prisoner in the United States in like 50 years or something recently. He executed. He got his little excitement out of that. But still, George Bush is and the Buddhists would not say God. It's not that God loves him, although there must be some God that does. But the Buddhists would say George Bush has been our mother. George Bush has been a family member to us all in previous life. One of the great things Tutu does, see, he does it with God, which is sort of easy for people. He says, God wants us all to be family, wants us all to be brothers and sisters. And he goes on like that. The Buddhists, since they don't have a creator, you see, they believe in God, though. Buddhists are not atheists. Please get over that stereotype. There's so many gods the Buddhists believe in. They're dealing with them, and goddesses, they're dealing with them all the time. But it's just there's no one who's omnipotent. There's no one. There are good gods, there's negative ones, there's sort of demonic, stupid ones. They tend to get a little egotistical, gods do, because they're like, they're God after all. They're like, big deal, But they're not omnipotent, and actually they tend, if they're still egotistical, if they're still afflicted by ignorance, according to Buddha's view, cause of all of our suffering, which is our failure to understand our true relationality is actually all that it is. I think I have to tell you what Buddhism is. I always hate to do that, even though it's not the topic. But it's foundational to the topic. I have to tell you what it is. Because I think people don't know. They think Buddhism is some sort of mental anesthesia. You go and you sit, and then you sit there, and then somehow, eureka, you disappear. And everything is fine because it all disappeared. The insoluble situation of the world is gone. And that's nihilism, that's not Buddhism. That's completely incorrect. Buddha is a teacher of the art of happiness, as the Dalai Lama rightfully called his book. He always was. He never is a teaching of the futility of life or the inevitable suffering of life. He only harps on suffering to get people to do what is necessary to overcome it. It's like he honestly diagnoses a symptom. What the Buddha said was that if you're unenlightened, you're bound to suffer. But that's an obvious thing, really. It's not complicated. Why? And then, now this is my little brief, brief, usual introduction to Buddhism for you, what really Buddhism is. You see, everyone here in this room, like we can make it so simple. Everyone here in this room, except those who are enlightened, and I know you won't be offended because you won't mind that I mistake you for an unenlightened one. But otherwise, I am unenlightened, so I can include myself. Everyone in this room thinks secretly, as my old Mongolian teacher used to say, decades before the Matrix, everyone secretly thinks, I'm the one. I'm the main event in this room. Now, you know better than to announce that. If you're a little older, only babies announce it like, I'm the one, bring me the breast. Grown-up people say, oh no, after you, yes. They say, but secretly they're still thinking, I'm the one. But they say that you're the one to you because they know that you think you're the one. They know how deluded you are. Because two people can't be the one. And each of you knows that everybody else in the whole room disagrees with you. They all think they're the one. And you know you are. But then you get used to it, you get resigned to it. And you sort of act like we're going to share it. And occasionally you fall in love with someone and you say, oh, you're the one. For a short time. And then occasionally they fall in love with you and they say, oh, you're the one. Then you feel good. But then that only lasts a rather short time, unfortunately. And so what Buddha was saying, it's obvious to us all, is that as long as you think you're the one, And as long as the universe doesn't agree with you, you're the loser. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to go say, hey, I'm the one. And everybody else is going to say, goodbye. Not for us. And then you can have a tantrum. You can do this. You can invent a nuclear weapon. You can do whatever you like. And you still won't be the one. And you're therefore going to be frustrated and suffer. So that's what Buddha said. He says, he looked at a group of people, he said, this here is suffering. And then people got all confused, even the poor Pope. He said, Buddhism, how can anybody? Buddhism is so depressing. Who needs that type of thing? In The Threshold of Hope, he wrote that. Well, Cardinal Ratzinger wrote it for him. And then he got in trouble in Sri Lanka. They got all irate, the monks. But Buddha only said, if you persist in being the center of the universe, with the universe not accepting you, as it will not, then you will suffer. However, the good news, that's just the surface diagram. The good news is, you can easily discover that you're not the one, or that you're only one of the ones. To make it sound less drastic, because a lot of people have misunderstood Buddhism as thinking that the big discovery is, oh, I'm not the one. So then I'm the one who knows I'm not the one. So therefore I'm the one who isn't here. So therefore I'm cool. And I can tell you how many uneasy snickers I've gotten in Zen centers and Buddhist centers. When I tease them and I say, oh, you had a 3-year retreat, 3-week retreat, 3-day retreat, 24-hour retreat, and then you had the big disappointment at the end. Weren't you disappointed? And they say, what do you mean? I said, there you were. You're still there at the end. You're like, emptiness, emptiness. Let me disappear. Emptiness, emptiness. And then you can have states of disappearing. I'm gone. I'm not here. There's no gurgling in my stomach. There's no pain in my butt. I can't remember my anxieties. But then suddenly they go bing on the bell and here I am again. Oh no, I got a parking ticket. My foot hurts. I'm late for supper. My pension check is canceled by Enron. They stole my pension. It's so disappointing. You're still there. And then they snicker, like, but they secretly are thinking they're going back for another 10-year retreat, and then they will finally disappear. So Buddhists misunderstand it too, totally, often. But Buddhism means that you can easily discover that you are neither the one, in the sense of being absolute, intrinsically real, independent, self-sufficiently established entity in the sort of most important entity in the universe, nor are you simply non-existent. You are just one of the ones. We are all here together, totally interconnected. Each of us empty of anything separate from everybody else. Meaning each of us full of being a relational nexus, totally interconnected to everybody else, and conventionally and temporarily, independently self-responsible, self-responsive, loving, feeling, interconnected, compassionate. This is what we are here together. We are truly relational. We are, as the Lakota Indians say, all one family, all beings, not just all humans. Bishop Tutu mainly is into all humans, because that's the Christian thing, the Western thing, or Abrahamic thing. But in the East, all beings, every animal too, is our mother, actually. Every animal, too, is interwoven, interconnected with us. Every animal has been. All of you here have been my mother in previous lives many times. Sorry. I've been your mother, every single one of you. I gave birth to you, as a mammal, that is. It's especially hard to be a mom as a mammal, because you have to have the baby inside you for some long time. Then it's a real pain getting it out. Then you have to, it's helpless for years, and you have to deal with it. Then it's a teenager. That was a big noise. So, we've all done this for each other endless times. And also every animal has done it, in the Buddhist view. See, the Buddhists, instead of having God creating us all as children of God, God being just sort of a label for the infinite, something transcending the idea of personality or impersonality or person or male or female, But in the Buddhist thing, it's because of the infinity of the universe, the beginninglessness of life, the fact that we've all been interliving, we've all been interbeing, interwoven with each other for an infinite past. We all have an infinite past. Therefore, we've had infinite interconnection. And guess what? We have an infinite future. And therefore, we're going to be here. Here we are. Went to great trouble. Robin and Cody organized the Prophets Conference. A little scary, that title. But the great rethinking, that's good. That's easier. And we came from all over, and we flew here, and some of you walked here through the hallowed halls. But we've met each other infinite numbers of times in the past. And we're going to be here infinite numbers of times in the future. And also, we'll be here with all of the people we don't want to be here with. Next Prophets Conference, George Bush and Donald Rumsfeld are going to be in the front row. But they'll probably be reborn female just for a little learning experience. If they're lucky enough, it'll be Georgette and Donalita. And they'll be like, or maybe they'll be gay lovers. Just to kind of get them a little hipper, a little more style conscious. So we can't get rid of anybody. You realize that that's a strong incentive to become enlightened. And not only that, but to share it to make sure everybody else becomes enlightened. Because who would want to keep being here forever unless we were all enlightened? Enlightened meaning, remember, not that we're all here sort of and not here, but that we're all here in such a way that is the opposite from the ordinary way. The ordinary way is that we're all here sort of with each other on sufferance, because we're sort of forgiving each other that you don't recognize that I'm the one. You forgive me that I don't recognize that you're the one. We're all here trying to get the most out of each other, and nobody's getting enough. And so we're like watching our wallet, and we're looking, and we're like paranoid. The opposite of that is we're here, each one forgetting about themselves, totally for everyone else. So there's one less person looking out for you, and that's yourself. But everybody else is looking out for you. It's the concept of a Buddha land. I call it a food fight universe. But that's probably because I'm American and I'm thinking of John Belushi. Here we're like each person's got their food and they're eating their thing and they're starving. Well, too bad. There isn't enough. I have to have mine. But in such a universe, everyone is giving everyone else their food. So instead of eating your own food, you're giving it to everybody else. And everybody else is giving their food to you. What does that sound like? That sounds like a food fight. It's like you take your shirt off and give it to everybody, then you don't have one shirt. And then all of your shirts come out like me, like I'm a laundromat. But that's the Buddha universe. That's called a Buddhaverse, I call it. Buddha Kshetra, field of enlightened beings. So how do we get there? So it's clear, it's logical. It's totally logical. Cool heroism is totally logical. This planet will be a peaceful planet. Real peace. There'll be real peace on this planet when every individual person, or the vast majority at least of persons, are willing to die rather than to kill. Today, unfortunately, many persons are trainable and trained to be willing to die in order to kill. But they're not just trained to kill. They're trained to be willing to die in order to kill, which is kind of paradoxical. So the pretense that everyone is out for survival and no one can transcend their grasping at their own life is false, and militaries wouldn't exist if that were so. If everybody was just too scared to risk death, there would be no violence, because they wouldn't go out and fight. And everyone would say to George what George said in the Vietnam War, which is, no thanks, I'm staying in Texas. If everybody did that, there'd be no war. The generals would give orders and nobody, you go. Wouldn't it be fun to see Saddam Hussein and George Bush and Osama bin Laden in mud wrestling on World Wrestling Federation out there, beating each other up. And that would be it, the end of it. The winner takes all. Saddam Hussein would take Texas, I think. He's a little bigger and stronger, I think. We would have champions, and then the rest of us could stay home. But the logical syllogism is, as long as people can be brainwashed and trained and conditioned to be hot heroes, what I call hot heroes, that is to say, use the emotion of hate directed at a demonized enemy in order to sacrifice your life to kill them, we will continue to have violence. As long as that's the only institution, the militaristic institution, that has a monopoly on dishing out the human reconditioning to help people overcome their survival instinct in order to kill, on the pretense that someone else is going to survive, a loved one, a nation, a religion, whatever it is, somebody's going to survive. I'll die, but I'll kill a lot of the enemy. So logically, as long as that's the case, there will be no end to the violence. But when more people will refuse that order, they'll refuse that training and that conditioning, they will say, no, you can kill me, but I won't kill. That's what Jesus said. Turn the other cheek. Don't hate your enemy. Buddha said, hatred will not put an end to hatred. Only love can put an end to hatred. Both of them said that. And every other great teacher said that. And nobody still is listening. But it's just logical. It isn't some do-gooder fantasy. It's logical. We all refuse. And we make that risk. Gandhi got in a lot of trouble here in England before the World War, when he said, the Nazis, the Germans, nobody quite knew what they were going to amount to before the war, but he said, as far as I'm concerned, you Brits here are the Nazis. You're chopping off the thumbs of our weavers to make us export our cotton to England. You're like beating us up and torturing us and shooting us down when we protest. You're our Nazis. Why should we fight some Germans? And besides, if we fight them, that makes them stronger. Non-violently is the way that you should resist evil, he said. Then they got all upset. Gandhi wants to surrender to the Nazis, blah, blah, blah. They got really excited. Then he said, excuse me, you misunderstood me, he said. I never said surrender. Non-violent resistance is not surrender. Non-violent resistance is, we're not going to fight you and kill you, but we're not going to do what you want either. We're going to stand here in your face until you stop your aggression and your hostility. So then they said to him, that's what I'm talking about, he says. There's 3 reproaches to evil, Gandhi said. He clarified. Manchester Guardian, I think, 1930-something. There's 3 approaches to it. One is to surrender to it and do its bidding. That's the worst. I'm not saying, that's what you think I'm recommending, that you all become Nazis. I don't say that. The second is to fight evil violently. And so that's a kind of heroism. That's hot. He didn't use the term I do, hot and cold, but that's hot heroism. And that's better than surrendering. But the best and the only one ultimately that's effective is to fight violence non-violently. To lay your life on the line, not to kill, and to let the enemy know that you will resist them to the death, but not by killing them. What that will do is that they will run over you at first. Therefore, some will die. But then they will stop running over people who are not resisting them violently. They're getting orders from a ruler who says they're all out for you. They're all trying to kill you, so kill them. And then they see that you're not trying to kill them. Then they can't obey that order. Then their system of paranoia crumbles from within, says Gandhi. When they are loved beyond their violence, even by people willing to die not to kill them, this will overcome them, he said. I know it sounds incredible to us, but we see it. We've seen it. We saw it in Czechoslovakia just now. Our history is distorted, you understand, in America and in England. We are taught a false history. We are taught that Caesar is more important than Jesus. Because we were taught by Romans, in fact. We are taught that Bush is more important than Bishop Tutu, than the Dalai Lama. But this is false history. That's not true. They are not more important, temporarily only. And if we would recognize that they were not, then they would lose all importance, and we'd be free. So Gandhi taught that already then. And then people said to him, well, but Mr. Gandhi, they would kill so many people before they finally realized that they were in a world different from the world that Hitler is telling them they're in. A world where everybody hates them, and therefore they're justified in attacking and dominating them. They're not in such a world. By the time they realize that their tanks will have rolled over so many bodies, many people will have died. And Gandhi responded, yes, of course. That's why it's heroism, to face a violent, evil enemy non-violently. But when you fight them violently, many people will die also, he said. And how many people did die? And then Gandhi said this, which is really critical to us. He said, you allies, of course, you fight violently then, and you will win, because there are more of you than there are Hitler or Mussolini or the Japanese. The allies are more numerous, you will win. But in the process of winning, the same type of people will take over your societies, and you will not get rid of them easily, he said. Now, any red-blooded American, they don't want to think like that. Oh, yes, Stalin took over, he kept his hold over, let us say, Russia. Oh, yeah, the bad guys kept Russia, sure. So Gandhi was right there. Gee, they're really bad guys. KGB and Stalin, etc., took over Russia. Yeah, they're really bad. But our people are really good. General Eisenhower, Truman, etc., the CIA, the Pentagon. Well, they're nice. Really? How many other people in the world think they're nice since World War II? How many people? I've been traveling the world since the 50s myself. And I have been greeted in different countries as an American, and the popularity level has gone down and down and down and down and down and down and down. Even in countries that have some reason to think that we might have been helpful at some time. Down and down. And now I think it's at the absolute nadir, although we have a government in place in America that is planning to make us even more unpopular, unfortunately. Wait till they start unleashing their latest generation of little nukes. Tactical. They are wanting to deploy. They're spending billions of dollars on deploying little bunker busters, just little dinky ones. 100 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb, each of them. But just to put under Baghdad in case there's somebody down there in the tunnel somewhere. It's really sick. So Gandhi was correct, is my point. We were taken over in our name. People were slaughtered in Central America in our name. Guns are being sold to both sides of every kind of genocidal conflict, tribal conflict in Africa. Oh, but it's somehow Africans are just crazy. Well, they're crazy with our guns. I remember Richard Holbrooke, a friend of mine. He was all agitated one time because he had to go to Cyprus, and he was trying to talk to the Turks and to the Greeks and to get them cooled down. He says, oh, those Turks and those Greeks. And then I happened to see a paper that day, which I then mentioned to him, and he was a little discomfited. And the paper was about how a new generation of missiles was being sold to the Turks. And then the Greek guy was bidding on them in the same Paris military show, and they were being sold by Northrop Grumman of the United States, where Richard Holbrooke was supposed to be the diplomat. And the weapons were being sold to both sides that he was going to try to stop by his own campaign, his own boss's campaign contributors. Give me a break. Gandhi was correct, in other words. My point is that logically speaking, we know we will not have peace until individuals en masse make the choice to be vulnerable, make the choice to vote against this and that defense expenditure, do tax resistance, whatever it takes. Be vulnerable. Don't believe the false promises of security being provided by lunatics. They had a building was blown up in New York City, my city. I was only 4 or 5 miles away. They were going to help with our security. Do you think our security is better now than it was 2 years ago? It's a total joke. It's 100 times worse. The bin Laden people out there, recruiters' doors are wide open. And the young Arab men are rushing in there, teenagers, ready to die. Ready to run into Iraq and blow themselves up. 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times more than 2 years ago. And these lunatics pretending to us they're increasing our still, we're fixing it. And they're arresting everyone and depriving them of civil liberties under the pretense of increasing security. But the point is, we know better. Now, so what is the alternative then? How do we win this battle? Bishop Tutu basically was referring to what happened in South Africa as a miracle. He says even just before the election, the fateful election when they elected Mandela, when the blacks were allowed to vote for the first time, and when everyone elected Mandela, he said that they expected there was like about to be an insurrection, and the Inkatha Zulu were about to freak out. And I was just reading about it, and they thought it's not going to happen. It can't happen. A good thing. We were all indoctrinated to think that a good thing can't happen. It just won't. Something go wrong, you know. That John Brokaw, the NBC, the BBC, they'll be out there showing what went wrong, and it won't happen. We're indoctrinated and brainwashed to think it can't happen. That's why we won't put our real energy into it. We're going to keep our own security. We're going to pull back. But it did happen at that time, for that time in South Africa. Bishop Tutu thinks it's a miracle. But what can be done to see to it that the miraculous takes place? Well, I'll tell you what. What you're doing here right now, what I'm doing, what we're all doing, what Robin and Cody are doing, that is what will ensure that it takes place. This is a tiny drop in a bucket, of course. For example, at my own home university. In other words, what I'm saying is cool heroism is an educational problem. It's an educational issue. You can be educated to become a cool hero or heroine. You can learn to rewire your anger reactions. They are not hardwired as some fake biogrammarians, as they call themselves, say. As some people who promote the selfish gene say, who try to tell us that we are nothing but some sort of biological products and that we have no spirit, we have no mind, we have no soul, that mind has no control over matter. Meanwhile, we're human beings, and anyone who really examines a human being carefully, I mean scientifically, I don't mean religiously, I mean scientifically, knows that the main thing about human beings is that they are, of all animal forms that we are aware of, completely malleable. A serial killer can become a saint. A sort of saint, some kinds of saints can become very evil and negative and exploitative. As long, of course, as there's egotism, instinctual egotism ingrained there and hasn't been uprooted, there's the danger always of becoming negative, anyone. Even if they can control themselves by categorical imperatives or system of ethics or religious views or convictions, in the long run, if they don't go down and change the instinct, there was some danger. But the instincts can be completely changed in human beings. Anybody who denies that is not aware of how many thousands of charges of the Light Brigade in human history. Hot heroism proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the human being can completely change their wiring. It's just that they do it out of hatred. The warrior does it out of hatred. Hatred can overcome the survival instinct totally. What the education that they perfected in India, the yoga of cool heroism, which pacified Asia, relatively speaking, in relationship to the West, the more poor, backward, and barren West, and violent West. The West, which conquered the planet due to its backwardness. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Oh, sanctified spirits of Oxford, there you are. It reached out and conquered the planet because of its relative backwardness. Columbus, why was Columbus trying to get to India? He wasn't looking for the Aztecs. He wasn't looking for America. He didn't want to go play baseball. He wanted to go to India to get some spices, some perfume, some rubies, some diamonds. He wanted to go rob and loot and pillage in India because you couldn't get that much out of France. Agincourt, what do you get in France? A little perfume from the south. You get to have a villa in Nice and get away from the bad weather you used to have in England. So they developed this education. And this is the education my university doesn't teach. And education is not only what you teach in this and that lab, in this and that humanities course, in this and that social science course. Education is taught in these institutions on the fields, playing fields. Football is military education. Football is training in hot heroism. I don't see the Oxford yoga team. Where is it? Where's the Columbia yoga team? Okay, it's downward dog on the 40-yard line. Those Columbia butts are sticking up in the air further than the Oxford ones. Who's winning? Okay, 1 hour on their head. The Oxford team is weakening. They're crumpling. I don't hear that. Hatha yoga is a profound de-armoring of the militaristic nervous system, a removing of the insensitivities, the squashing of feelings in the diaphragm, in the throat, in the pelvis that make a person potentially violent and unfeeling and insensitive to the suffering of others and therefore capable of killing them. Militarism. Did you ever see that the militarism, inculcates a certain yoga? And that's like butt out, chest out, neck down, suck in the stomach. Then you don't feel your own fear. Then you don't feel the agony of another when you kill. People don't normally go around killing each other. It's like you don't want to stick something in there and then they go, That's no pleasure in it. But if you have no feeling, beings are sympathetic with each other naturally. Human beings are empathetic. How many men here have been through childbirth? Right down to the sound. When that little head comes out of there. I guess it's a head. What is that? With the screaming and this and that. First one I got in, I said, shh. I was saying, doctor said, shut up, scream more. How many men know how to do that? Humans are empathetic. You don't want to give her a spinal coddle, give one to me. That's a 90s dad, that's an 80s dad, that's a 70s dad. Give me the anesthetic then. So it takes a training to make a human being unfeeling vicious. Of course, the training is in the family. The militaristic father smacks the kid, especially the son. Smacks him up. Make him tough, supposedly. Prepare him for life. But for life, what kind of life? Life in a militaristic society. Yoga is preparing you for life in a more gentle society. It opens the diaphragm, loosens the granta, the knots in the nervous system that make you unable to feel your own feelings, much less the feelings of others. Where's the yoga in my university? Barely. They sneak in a little bit nowadays in the stress reduction division of the infirmary for those proto-corporate executives, who are going to go out and do a markup on your electricity bills later, once they graduate and they're liberally educated. They're going to be liberally educated to go out and rip you off with Enron and with this and that, I'm afraid. So what you're doing here yourselves, you who have come here, who are looking for a prophet, looking for a new thinking, you are actually engaging in the yoga of cool heroism. You are engaging in trying to think of another kind of learning that will shift your view of reality to understand where the cool hero is the more powerful. Because that is how we understand the teaching of Jesus. That is how we understand the teaching of Buddha. The point of Jesus' point was not to get himself crucified. I'm sorry. Now, Bishop Tutu, he thinks that's a miracle, and he loves it, and understand he loves it, because he sees that even out of that something else can come. But Jesus' point was the resurrection, not the crucifixion. Do your worst, Caesar, is what he says. I can just jump right out of that and go around and make some lightning bolts and flap around and go to Ladakh and do yoga. You can't kill me, was what he's saying. Not that you do kill the loving one. Oh, Caesar kills them. Oh, yeah, so then we should pay respect to Caesar. That's not the message. Excuse me. The message is you can't kill me. Do your worst. It doesn't kill me. He is more powerful than Caesar is the message, not how the institutional church has all too often interpreted it. I'm sure those of you here must be aware of the work of the later Tolstoy, The Law of Life and the Law of Love, which inspired Gandhi, actually. Gandhi was not just inspired because Buddhism wasn't there anymore and he wasn't aware of his mother's Jainism. And Hinduism can be quite tough. Bhagavad Gita, fight the fight, They can be quite tough, warrior-like, in the hot warrior side. Although it has that other yoga side too. Everything is complicated, There's no perfection in our planet other than the perfection you can achieve in your own heart in any moment of true love. That's the only perfection in our planet, is love in spite of the imperfection. And love is not just, oh, wait a minute, I feel it, it's coming. That's not love. Love is educated. Love is born of wisdom. Love is born of insight into the nature of reality. In the West, religion and science were split rather badly and still are. And so people think, oh, Buddhism must be a religion. So someone Buddhist saying that we can be cool heroes, that's nice. That's like people saying, listen to Jesus. It's just another religious thing. It's nice and optimistic, but it's unreal because really we know, we've studied those genes. We got them under control. We've got you by the short genes. And we're going to get, well, we don't quite have every gene, but we have the Genome Project. We're soon going to get you. We need a few more billions. Or if we don't get you by the genes, we're going to get you by the neurons. With our neuroscience, we're going to get you somehow. They're still telling you. Meanwhile, they don't know what's going on. Nobody has control of even one atom. They don't even know what is an atom. Nobody knows. Well, we're about to find out if we have a bigger accelerator in Texas. They're going to build an even bigger one than the one in Switzerland or the one in Chicago. Build one in Texas. Then we'll know what the atom is finally, and then we'll have the world under control. Those people are kind of priests. They're kind of a high priest of the religion of materialism, of scientism, pretending that, like priests always tend to pretend a little bit, because they feel like God did in the Buddha story, that people will feel insecure if they don't pretend that somebody knows. Somebody knows for sure. But the point is they don't know. They're just pretending. And they admit, actually they do admit that they don't know when they're applying for a grant. That's when they admit it, because they say we need to investigate more, so we need 10 billion more. They say, we don't know yet, but we'll know after we spend the 10 billion. Then they get all like we know, and then as the budget goes down and dwindles, they have to write the next grant. Then they don't know anymore. Oh, that was great research. We discovered all the more things that we don't know, so we need more money. The fact is, cool revolution, the existence of your mind as an irreducible continuum, not as a fixed immortal soul in the sense of a fixed you that is the one that's apart from everything else in the universe and that is just sort of like a dog tag. I call it like a platinum dog tag, that if you know the right prophet, if you know the right God, he'll just pluck that dog tag out of the mess. After all your sins, after all your confusion, after nuking everybody, then he'll just come, he'll go to Texas and he'll pick up the right dog tag out of all those like oil executives and actually failed oil executives who became politicians. He'll just pluck it out there and give it to sweet Jesus to put up there in the country club, in the eternal, immortal country club on a shelf like a golf trophy. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. But the irreducibility of your own spiritual continuum, your spiritual gene, your soul gene that encodes your generosity, your wisdom, your love, your compassion, that you have exercised over billions of lives, you would not become a human It's impossible to be human without having been, when you were a crocodile, you were Pogo, you were the nice one. You were the one who didn't munch down the first zebra. You were the one who passed over the pregnant zebra and got the old, tough, like stringy, old duffer zebra. So the pregnant one could go and have a baby zebra. You didn't just do it because you were thinking, I'll have more zebras later to eat. You did it because you had a moment of compassion as a crocodile. Why eat 2 zebras? The little one is nothing. I'll go eat this old one. I will restrain, in other words, my violence, my immediate eat the other one because I'm the one. You see, crocodiles they have the same egotism. They have the same egotistical soul. They just let it go by, but it's very hard for a crocodile to think of that, because there's not a great deal of neurons up there. It's just, they're going like that. They have a big mouth like that. Although never disrespect a crocodile. I saw one movie with a mother crocodile, and I used to use crocodile as an example of how humans are so empathetic mammals, But then this mother crocodile, she laid her eggs, and then she had to spend weeks chasing those male crocodiles away, the stupid males who would eat them. The father crocodile. Because, the egg, the reptile just puts the egg out there. They don't have to carry the egg around, for 8 months or 9 months. They just lay them in the sand. So she defended them. And then when they hatch, she goes there and she takes the little crocodiles down to the water. And can you imagine picking up 250 squirming little crocodiles with a jaw like that? No hands? No tongs, no chopsticks? Just a big jaw. Pick up all those little crocodiles without hurting them? So even crocodile moms have a lot of empathy and sensitivity. And we shouldn't look down on crocodiles. But the point is, they're relatively less than human. Human can be tremendous. They can give their life for their community. Moms give up their sleep for their babies year after year. That's tremendous. Dads don't do that. I gotta go to work in the morning, leave me alone. So this love and this cool heroism is a matter of education. If everybody at Oxford had to read compulsorily Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Living, about how to develop the patience of voluntary suffering, which actually everyone does practice, even though you weightlift, no pain, no gain, that saying? To develop your body, you sort of put yourself through pain, you develop tolerance that way. That's one type. Then that's called the patience of knowing the nature of reality. When someone attacks you, you realize that they are running on a program that they are helplessly the victim of. When someone hates you, they are just the victim of hate. They're really not your enemy. Like if someone comes angrily at me and hits me with a stick, I'm not angry with the stick. I don't go and break and beat up the stick. I don't beat up their wrist. I don't beat up their arm. I want to beat up their agency, the personality I ascribe to them that willfully and malevolently picks on me to beat me up. Not realizing that agency is taken over. Have you ever been really mad yourself? Did you ever get really furious? That crosses the line. That's just too much. That can't be tolerated. Did you ever get like that? When you do, how do you do things that you're proud of when you feel like that? Do you hurt yourself? Sure. You might punch somebody, then you have a huge cut on your knuckle, except in the movies. Because people have teeth and things. They have people are bony. You bang your head on a wall maybe if you can't find them. You wreck your own car. You smash your own dishes. You hurt your loved ones. You say awful things that someone who you really like then won't talk to you for a year. And you have to apologize. In other words, you lose control of yourself. Who then takes control of you? Your anger, your rage, your hatred, the heat. And then you do all these regrettable things. So the second level is the reality. Who is the cause when someone attacks me? What is the cause? It's their hatred. It's their ignorance. The only thing I should make an enemy is the hatred that they have. Therefore, I can't hate them because then it would be taking me over. And then understanding the reality. That's why I went a little riff on the scientist, because To really develop cool heroism means changing our vision of reality. And the key one we have to change, by the way, is our understanding of death. Because only by understanding death can we understand life. Because death is what they brandish over us to intimidate us and terrify us. Or they hold out death to us as the promise of exculpation. Death is the big excuse. That is to say, well, I can't really put out the effort to conquer my Pentagon, to bravely confront the military-industrial complex, and actually even risk my life in front of John Ashcroft or whatever, to reject them, to resist them, because they might kill me, and I want to be alive as long as I can. But, you know, if they do something in my name, like obliterate a few countries and kill many innocent women and children and pollute the earth for 100,000 years, well, I'll be dead by then, which means I won't be there to experience the fruits of the negative actions. And since they do it in my name, the little bit of consequence that comes to me by mine tolerating them behaving badly in my name, using the taxes that I don't dare not pay, which they then put into their tactical nuclear weapons, I let them do it. Because when I'm dead, I'm going to be nothing. The materialist scientists assure me there's no hell. They assure me, you know, maybe I make a hell. The nuclear weapons will make a hell for some unborn babies in Iraq, in Afghanistan. My spent uranium shell casings that are splattered all over those countries by the lunatics who are making money in my social system that I pay taxes in. I don't get the cost. They have a hell. They live in a hell. Those mothers. They produce something that's really unpleasant. A beautiful child that they dreamed of becomes deformed and horrible because of that. But I don't have any, so I'm going to be dead. I won't know. But if we're here forever, if reality is, in fact, Pascal's wager, like the Buddhist version of Pascal's wager, we are all here forever, together with each other. You're going to be reborn. You're going to remarry your ex. Next time, she'll be the man and you'll be the woman. Or vice versa. You just divorced and you never see, you moved to a different country, but there they'll be. Or they'll be reborn. Your worst enemy will be reborn as your child. You wonder why they are colicky. Keep you up all night. They're starting in. If you see reality as this interwovenness of yourself with others, and you don't accept any false assurances that there's some way of getting out of relationship, out of communion with all beings, this gives you the power to overcome your deepest instinct, actually, and make sure that your whole instinct becomes an instinct for love. Love means not just, love means I want you to be happy. Love means I want the beloved to be happy. That the beloved's happiness is foremost. It is my foremost concern. That is love. Love is just not I want someone to be mine. That's desire, possessiveness. Love is I want someone to be happy. Of course, if we are connected with everyone forever, we have to see to it that they are happy. It's in our, actually, as the Dalai Lama likes to say, one of his going to be selfish, at least be a wise selfish. If you want to be selfish, that means you're concerned for your own happiness. You have what the Tibetans call, you're afflicted, you're under the control of the demon of self-preoccupation all the time. Like, what can I have? What do I want? How good is it? Am I happy? Your own Mick Jagger, Britain's Mick Jagger said that. So instead of that other preoccupation means, I want you to have enough. I want you to be happy. I want you to do it. Then I don't worry about myself because you'll take care of me. That's being a wise selfish. I forget about my own condition and how much I'm getting, and I just try to make sure that everybody else wants me to have everything by being enlightened. That's obviously a smarter way to go. And So this is the only way you can get down to the deep, deep wiring when you live what I call the evolutionary life. I don't want to evolve beyond, it's almost there. When you live what I call the evolutionary life. You see, the scientists are scared if the soul comes back that the church fathers will reintroduce the Inquisition. No, they are. Therefore, like in America, and it's kind of worrisome in America where you have the fundamentalists, for example, now 50, 60 million strong with their TV stations and the huge money they get out of them. And they have this college curriculum where they teach geology that the Grand Canyon was formed by a flash flood 8,000 years ago. After Adam, who was a white male, was created in Kenya, minus one rib. Kentucky Fried spare rib. Mrs. Adam. And the scientists in a way are right to be worried that there can be lunatic views on the spiritual side very easily. Carl Sagan, at the end of his life, wrote a book called When Demons Stalk the Earth. He was so scared of superstition and fanaticism and crazy. And we can look, the Islamic fanaticism, and you have an American president talking about a crusade before his PR people shut him up. I mean, it is worrisome, but there's a middle way. In India, the mainstream in Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism, they have both a scientific evolutionary theory long before Darwin. And it's much more thoroughgoing than Darwin because it doesn't just talk about genes evolving and species evolving. You're evolving. People are evolving. There's a personal engagement in evolution because they have three genes. There's 3 sets of genes for every one of us. We have 3 sets, not 2. Mom's gene is, they call it a red gene. Dad's gene is a white gene, blood and bone. And your gene is a blue one that's called your spiritual gene that comes in from your former life. And what is encoded in the spiritual gene? What is encoded is your generosity, your ethical sensitivity, your patience, your creativity, your concentration, your wisdom, knowledge of reality. Not just your sort of personality and are you male or female. Gender identity is not necessarily in there. Everyone has been reborn, every gender, including some we didn't even think of. Everyone has. There's no absolute male and absolute female. That's nonsense. These are totally transformable. But that goes on. We have been embedded in this evolution all the way, and we will continue to be embedded in the evolution. So that every good thing we do now, even if we have a good moment of thought, will create good form. It will help us evolve in a good direction in the future. Every negative one, if we let our mind just go, if we say, okay, I'm going to get mad today, it won't matter anyway. It's wrong, it will matter. Everything has infinite repercussion. Imagine the mindfulness, the different, they say in America, Baba Ramdas, my old buddy, he says, be here now. But when you're an American materialist, what is here now? Here and now can be, unfortunately, I know he doesn't mean it that way, but here now can be kind of a big escapism. I'm not going to think about this and that. I'm just going to be here now, because what is the essence of here now if you're a materialist? By science, not by religion. If you really believe that you don't have a mind beyond your genes and your neurons and your this and that, here now means that actually there's nothing here and now. It's a kind of place to escape, where nothing matters. Let it all hang out, because nothing matters. Self-indulgent. And when nothing matters, what becomes all important? Whatever your immediate impulse is becomes all important. You can't restrain it. But when here and now becomes a chamber with infinite resonance in an infinite future, interwoven with infinite beings, it's an infinite here and now. And therefore, if I can think something a little more loving, a little less angry, a little more selfless, a little less egotistical, a little more generous, a little less stingy, here and now, that has infinite repercussion. And by the same token, if I become a little more creepy, infinite creepiness becomes a real danger. So I become infinitely alert. I become mindful to the tiniest resonance of the drop. I want the drop of nectar. I don't want the drop of poison going blink, because it can be an ocean of poison or an ocean of nectar. And when we know that, and when we all know that together, we can make it into an ocean of nectar. There's so many beings. If we learn, especially in Europe, in the West, we have a false history we learn in school. Battle of Hastings. Ta-da! Norman invasion. Ta-da! I conquered all of Gaul. Arma virumque cano. I sing of arms and a man. That's like backward. Rambo. Just because it's in Greek, it doesn't make it any less Rambo or Latin. Achilles is Rambo. You think Sylvester Stallone is a clod, Sylvester Stallone. But Achilles is Sylvester Stallone. Arnold. We are miseducated. History, when Jesus said, the meek shall inherit the earth. When Buddha said, the enlightened will see a Buddha land. They were not speaking in some airy, fairy other world. They were describing the actual force of history, of human beings. We are the loving beings. We are the gentle beings. As a mammals, we are the gentlest. If you're such a big, tough, socio-biological, fierce killer, where's your big fangs? Why aren't you 11 feet tall with 5 or 6 extra arms and eyes that can look out sideways? Why don't you have nuclear-tipped saliva? What's your problem? You're just such a wimp. We all are wimps. Sure, as wimps we can do more diabolical things when we think about it, because we have creativity, because we can think of all kinds of alternative scenarios. We can descend really quickly to worse than demonic state by cleverness, because we can even empathize with demons. But we really are gentle and loving. We bear our young within. Not one of you would be here if people hadn't handled you and petted you and fed you and wiped your butts for 5, 10 years. You wouldn't even be living here. Your brain would not have developed. So how can we think that some strutting little dork who's actually from Connecticut, pretending to be from Texas, is the powerful person on this planet? These people are desperate. They're desperate. All we have to do is just keep standing out there and be friendly and just keep giving them lifetime pass to the Prophets Conference, lifetime pass to their own yoga center downtown Houston, lifetime invitation to the best gay restaurant in downtown Houston to have some decent food instead of the weird Anglo toasted garbage, nitrate, weird bacon that they eat. And then we will win. And then we'll be cool heroes. Okay? So that's a little taste of cool heroism. I recommend to you intensely The Way of the Bodhisattva, Life. Shambhala Publications. It's not my translation. Essential Tibetan Buddhism of Mind. The Inner Revolution of Mind, which is still available in the American paperback. Even though the English one, I don't know what happened to them. They sold out. Actually, that might be good. And I urge you to look for next year the book that I forced my publishers to publish against their will, and I forced them to keep the title, which is called Infinite Life. But they wouldn't take my subtitle, which is, if you're going to live forever, you might as well enjoy it. But they refused that. I don't know why. Maybe because they didn't read the book properly. You know, nowadays editors don't read your books. They take you to lunch twice. And then you have to edit the books and write them and everything. It's very difficult. It's a part of the whole thing. Anyway, never mind. Actually, I love all of you. And I wish you well. And I'm grateful that you're listening to my rantings and ravings briefly. And I want you to know, in case you think I'm overly realistic, although I do believe this is the real vision of the world, that on my way here this time, I reached the ticket counter at the airline, Virgin Atlantic, presented my ticket, on time, well organized, in New York, but I was at the wrong airport. I was at Newark Airport for the 9 o'clock flight instead of Kennedy Airport. My grandchildren will be enjoying this story for decades. Grandpa went to the wrong airport. But anyway, I'm happy and I made it to see you. Thank you very much. Take care.